thing I need to do besides just bring the PowerPoint up on my desk.
Right. All right. Welcome, everyone. It is August 13th, and we are going to have a special topic tonight for our webinar that we offer through Aesthetic Impact Informational Services. Lynn Buchanan is going to be speaking on CRV, Controlled Remote Viewing Stage 7 Analytics. And that is not a new stage. It was one that many are familiar with from the original Stargate document, which I will read. It's on the screen here, but that way some people listen to this from small screens. So Stage 7 analytics as defined by the declassified Stargate document are analytics is the ability to make yes-no decision without producing AOL. This also gives the viewer the ability to recognize numbers and letters. This is a further development of stages 4 and 5. This has application in the recognition of addresses, insert problems, and code breaking. This stage is in the process of development by Ingo Swann, and according to Mr. Swann, this development is proceeding well. However, that document was written in 1985 and then eventually declassified. Lynn joined the unit at Fort Meade in 1984, and in that time, Ingo didn't just go out on a picnic. He continued to think and develop and bring things back to the people who were still involved using controlled remote viewing. And so Lynn is going to speak to us, especially about his years when, there were changes and there were advancements beyond what that basic bare outline was in that declassified document. So Lynn joined the unit in 1984 and left in 1992, according to the Stargate timeline, or the IRVA timeline on their website. So that's where I took that information. So with that, I am going to turn the presentation over to Lynn, and I'm going to make you a host, sir, and I can therefore, there you go, passing presenter over to Lynn Buchanan. So you are going to need to go up to the share button up along that top toolbar.
Okay.
It says either there or where it says event info, and click on that.
Okay.
And it'll tell you to share your desktop.
Okay. Good deal.
Okay. There you go.
I did that. Oh, what do you know? Okay, let me bring this thing up here. All right, are y'all getting that controlled remote viewing stage 7?
Yes.
Ah, good. Okay. There are some parts of this that may be a little bit upsetting to some people. Controlled remote viewing is a very complex science, and I think you all know that the atomic warhead was found by the people at SRI using only stages 1, 2, and 3. What they don't tell you is that they were using some of the much more complex parts of stages 1, 2, and 3. And when we teach basic, we teach the basic parts of stages 1, 2, and 3. Now, when you become experienced and much more trained and all that, we will go back a lot of times and tell you, hey, there's more to stage 1, and there's more to stage 2, and there's more to stage 3 that we didn't give you before because, you were just in training and not ready for it yet. And then we teach you some of the complexities. Excuse me. Well, Ingo was working on the advanced things, and you notice that thing from 1985 said stages 4 and 5. Stage 5 got pushed to stage 6. The new stage 5 became in-session analysis of the format and the data, and stage VII, which was originally analytics, got pushed to stage 8. And stage 7 became a stage of its own because of something that they finally discovered. And let me just go on into this presentation, and it'll kind of roll out to you as I do. The old definition, Ingo had originally designed stage 7 to be what he called analytics. If you've seen Tom McNair's early CRV manual, you'll see that when Tommy was in the unit, that was what stage 7 meant. I don't know if Paul Smith's manual has stage 7 in it or not. I know that our training manual introduces stage 7 in the basic course, but doesn't really go into it. And you're about to see why, because stage 7 is an extremely complex stage. Stage 7 stayed in a more or less constant state of change. By the time I got to the unit, analytics had been moved to stage 8, stage 7 had taken on a new meaning. Let's hold that off for a minute, because Teresa has been saying analytics. And so let me give you just a brief summary of what analytics is. Analytics is an attempt to use CRV to get alphanumerics. Now, if you know about CRV, you know that we always introduce it as it really sucks when it comes to getting numbers and letters and all, but there is a way, and there are ways to do it. It was also for getting multiple choice decisions like yes or no, the best of 5, the best of 10, and so on. You know, which one of the numbers is going to come up as the first digit in the pick 3 lottery or whatever. And by the way, when Ingo was developing analytics like this, he won I think the pick 3 lottery 7 times in 1 month. So, you know, that's not too bad. Other completely conceptual information, such as human devised devised concepts, and we'll get into that a little bit later too. For example, a number is a human construct, a human concept, and it's not a hard, tangible thing. You can have, for example, 5 cars, but those are cars. But if you want a 5, you know, that you can hold in your hand or something, then you're back to something that's not real. 5 is a human construct. Miles is a human construct, you know, and it's a human construct that in the States is known everywhere. In Europe and other places, it's as foreign to them as kilometers is to us, and so on. And, you know, leagues and furlongs and things like that. These are all human constructs, and they're very hard to get because they don't really exist, except in the minds of humans. And so analytics was developed to try and get these things using CRV. So, how can you view a human construct? One of the ways, stage 8 is a very complex stage too. One of the ways is you analyze other things that you're getting. Let me give you an example. Here's a very simple example of a sketch, all right? And in this sketch of a viewer, you see that A is a man-made object or man-made structure. B is described as paved and directional. C is described as trees, but then the viewer went ahead and said maybe 10 to 12 of them. All right? That is a guess. That is an estimate done by the conscious mind and really is not to be that trusted. If you give this to a trained analyst, they will look at this and know that the sketch was drawn by the subconscious mind. They'll look over here and they'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they'll believe that there were only 5 trees and exactly 5 trees because your subconscious will know and draw the trees even though you haven't asked it for a number. They will also see that the trees are separated from the structure by a distance. They'll also see that they're lined up so that they're along this paved area. And so an analyst in one of these sketches can get a lot of information, usually more accurately than the viewer can. And this is one of the beautiful things about being a part of a remote viewing team. Another example, by using normal stage 6 mapping, I don't know how many of you all have been through stage 6 mapping. You tap, 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 and that's what all these little dots are. You tap, 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 and this place feels black, that place doesn't feel black. And so all of a sudden you've gotten all these dots all over the page. You can start connecting all the black dots, and you can actually treat a number just like you can a map and find things on the page that has the number as well, you know, or on the ball that has the number, and you can treat it just exactly as you would searching around a printed map, excuse me, to see what's on the map. These are very short and simple examples of analytics. There are a lot more, and we may be able to go into something more in-depth that way. Let me tell you that when I got there, they had basically cut off teaching stage 7 and stage 8 because Ingo said that with the CRV as developed as it was, stages 1 through 6 would do everything we needed for intelligence operations. And he was right. Let me show you the progression of the CRV structure. I don't think a lot of people realize this. You have stage 1, which is ideograms, and that's one-dimensional lines, you know, just your squiggle. Then you have words, sensories, and dimensionals, okay? You come up to the AI, and then you go into stage 3, which is ideograms again, but these are two-dimensional drawings. And believe me, you can take that two-dimensional drawing and feel all around it. It is an ideogram, and you can get tons of information off of it. The information that you get, you report using the stage 2 columns, just like you did in stage 2. Okay, then you go to stage 4, and it's words. There are at least 8 columns, there could be more, for the different types of perceptions that you're going to get. You get into stage 5. Stage 5 was taken out of the viewing thing and is for in-session analysis of the content, of the structure, and all that of the session. Now, moving on to stage 6, you've got ideograms. You have maps, timelines. You have all kinds of multiple high definition ideograms. You have scales, you have tables, charts, scatter graphs, pie graphs, and so on that you can use in stage 6. You can also use three-dimensional. You get a lump of clay, or you get a model, a sandbox or something, and stage 6 will work in for three-dimensional ideograms. And you can touch that model, or you can put your hand on any spot in that sand table or whatever, and actually get impressions for it because it is an ideogram. Then you move to stage 7. It was analytics, but you notice with those last 2 examples, those were graphic in nature. And so now stage 7 is words, and you report those words on the right side of the paper, just in the same format as you would AOLs or stray cats. Stage 8 is ideograms. There's your new analytics. Stage 9, words. Stage 10, ideograms. Stage 11, words. Stage 12, ideograms. Stage 13, words, and so on. And it just keeps going back and forth this way, each one relieving the other as far as the work goes. And this is the pattern of the progression of CRV structure, getting more and more complex as you go. Okay, so let's get back to stage 7. What is this new stage 7? To understand stage 7, you have to first understand that this is a very specialized form of what we call a stray cat. Now, those of you who aren't familiar with that term, a stray cat is an AOL that is analytic overlay that happens at the subconscious level without the conscious mind ever getting involved in it. And so an AOL analytic overlay is when you analyze what you're getting and oh, I know what it is, and so on. A stray cat happens at the subconscious level, and it's fully formed before you ever become aware of it. Stray cat comes from the subliminal transfer of recollections, anxieties, and yearnings, that is, memories, fears, and desires, to consciously accessible thought. Stray cat, okay? Now, the special thing about the phase 7 type of stray cat, it's a stray cat because it's fully formed before it ever gets to you, to your conscious mind. But it transfers something else besides your memories, fears, and desires. This type of stray cat is just like a subconscious AOL, but it transfers specific and usually very highly detailed site information, and is pretty dependable most of the time, the majority of times. Okay, so how does it work? A phase 7 impression can come to you as a sketch, but that's very rare because the sketch will probably be over into phase 8, but sometimes, very rarely, it can come as a sketch. It usually comes in the form of a visual, a pun, a joke, or a story, a song that suddenly pops into your head or that you can't get out of your head, an old saying, a movie, book, or other type of title, like the title of a poem or something like that, or a visit, which I'll explain in detail, and sometimes, but very rarely, as a direct knowledge of the site. So let's take a look at each one of these in order. The phase 7 visual. There are times when you're working your session that a very fast flash of visual information will repeatedly keep coming to you, totally unbidden, and usually very annoyingly. You tend to get annoyed at it because it won't go away. This is different from the normal visual in that these flashes happen repeatedly, not in pop, 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 pop order, but you'll write one word, there's the flash. You'll write 2 or 3 more words, or maybe even go 2 more pages, flash, there it is again. And you can't seem to get rid of it. And it tends to be very sharply defined. Now, you know, you've always heard that visuals in CRV, you go for the fuzzy part of them because the sharp, clear part is your imagination. That's true, but in stage 7, it's different. This is a fully formed picture of the target, formed in the subconscious mind and thrown to your conscious mind, and so it's going to be clear, sharply defined, but it's usually too fast. I mean, it appears and it's gone, just like that. And it's usually too fast to catch clearly, but it'll be back. And so don't worry about it. And the phase 7 visual, you'll always tend to push it aside or just totally ignore it. Excuse me, that's been happening all day long. You just throw the phone in the pool. And you will almost always tend to push this aside because it's just flash, and it gets annoying to you. You want to get rid of it, and so you tend to not report it. You rarely ever feel the need to write it down. Listen, write it down. It's good information. It will generally be annoying to you because it tends to interrupt the rest of the session that you're trying to do. And it keeps interrupting and keeps interrupting until you finally pay some attention to it and write it down. If you don't write it down, listen, it's not going away. The phase 7 pun. The phase 7 pun will generally seem as though it's just a funny or sarcastic reaction to something you got. You'll rarely ever see any importance to it. You will only see what it means when you do your summary or when you get your feedback. In session, it's just going to be a cutty comment or a pun or something like that, and you don't really see the importance of it. Listen, it's important. Example, you're working a session to find out why someone can't stand up for more than a few seconds. All of a sudden, you get the impression square. It has nothing to do with anything you're viewing, and something totally unbidden within you pops up and says, yeah, baby, totally unhip. The pun here is that your subconscious is telling you that the problem with the person not being able to stand is not in the hip. It's totally unhip. And so these are the puns that, I mean, that's the very cheap level of pun that will come through. Another example, you're describing a location. You detect things like outdoors, people sounds, and suddenly something totally unbidden says, Seagrams. Now, I don't know if everyone over in Europe or anywhere else watching this, but the pun here is it's telling you that 7 people, because the brand of whiskey is Seagrams 7. And so it gets these puns in there just to play with you, you know. And there are times when your subconscious just gets playful. The phase 7 joke. Your subconscious mind can get totally bored with the session, with viewing in general, or with the speed at which you're viewing, or it can just feel like acting up one day. When it does, it often starts doing things to enliven things a little. And that's generally when it starts coming up with jokes or one-liners or things like that. These are usually funny. They're often of a sarcastic note. They make you smile or laugh, but you rarely ever feel the need to write them down. You just chuckle about what your mind gave you, and you keep on trying to get the target in a way that you don't expect. You just got the target. Okay? Example. You're working along and you get a perception of strong. Then a totally unbidden, you get, I didn't tell her coffee was too strong. All I said was I put 7 creamers in it and it didn't change color, you know. And this was your subconscious mind telling you it wasn't muscular strong like Hercules, but it was strong like strong coffee. And so here this little joke that just pops into your mind is trying to specify something that you've already gotten in this case. The P7 story. There are times when you will have a fairly complete or even full-blown story pop into your head, totally unbidden. Notice I'm stressing this while you're viewing. The story is usually not one of your own making, but it's generally something you read somewhere or you know of, It may be the plot of a movie or something like that. You may, however, notice that as you think about this story, facts in it that were in the original story will change. Maybe the characters or the endings will change, and so on. These changes are, it's these changes that are important because that's where the subconscious is telling you things about the target. And so if you get one of these, take a break, stop the session for a moment, and take the time to write it down, label it a P7 so that you'll know to pay attention to it later because it's got some good information in it. And then once you've finished, go back into session, keep working the target. The song in your head, Teresa reported one of these recently. You're working along and a song suddenly pops into your mind, or you realize that a song has been going through your mind for a while. And when that happens, pay attention to the exact lyrics that you're getting, okay? You will rarely ever mentally get the whole song, but instead you'll get a repeat of one verse or phrase of that song over and over. You'll rarely be aware of the song started in your head, but if you try to ignore it, it will slowly annoy you enough to bring your attention to it. It's one of those songs you can't get out of your head, it won't go away. Your mind sometimes will play the words leading up to the information it wants to convey as though to give you a chance to complete the thought. Example, and this happened to me. This is my first that I know of example of the story of the song in my head. I kept getting Lucy in the sky, Lucy in the sky. I didn't get the whole song, didn't get the whole stanza or anything. Lucy in the sky, and sure enough, the target was a handful of diamonds. And it's Lucy in the sky with diamonds. And of course, my subconscious was saying, Lucy in the sky, come on, you can do it, give me the rest. And of course, I couldn't do it. The song itself, and you have to understand this about a P7 song in your head, the song itself is not important. The exact lyrics that are going through your head is what the subconscious is using to tell you that something about the target. Write down the exact lyrics that you're getting. As soon as you write it down, the song goes away, and you can continue on clear-minded with the rest of the target. And here again, if you don't write it down, it's not going to go away. An old saying. Sometimes completely unbidden, you'll get an old adage or a bit of folk wisdom or a quote from the Bible or a quote from a friend or a quote from a famous person or whatever. When this type of P7 happens, it's going to seem to you like it's just a reaction to some perception you have or haven't written down. More like your mind is making an offhanded comment about some perception or about the target itself. It is making a comment about the target itself. It will often present itself as a colloquial, maybe not a quote that's famous, but it'll come in as hillbilly, New Jersey, something like this. And so it'll have an accent of some kind and will generally be humorous. I swear, he looks all boots and spurs, but the truth is he ain't got no horse. And this is telling you something about the target or a person at the target. There's a strong tendency to ignore this or just to chuckle about it and not write it down. After all, it's only an offhanded comment, but it is a P7 and it is telling you something about the target. A book or movie title. It's a very common type of phase 7 and is the hardest to decipher even when you're writing your summary. You don't know whether the message is in the title, in the moral of the story or the movie, in some quote from the book or movie, or reference to what you were doing when you read the book or saw the movie, and so on. It's almost always extremely confusing when you get this type of a P7. For the most part, this kind is noted. You just note that it's a P7, but its interpretation is best left to the analyst who knows what the target is, rather than the viewer. That is, unless you as the viewer immediately know what it means, and then you can write that down. It can also be very misleading. For example, what if grapes of wrath pops into your mind? Does that mean you're viewing grapes, anger, wrath, old-timey? Is it saying that the target is old-timey? Does it say it's about poverty? And so on. It can be very confusing, and it's very hard to know. The important thing here is don't stop your session to figure it out. Write it down. Keep on moving, okay? Because if you stop to figure it out, it's just going to stop your session, that's all. Like all of the P7s, it comes to you totally unbidden, just wham out of nowhere, and it seems like an interruption to your session. You may get annoyed at it, but when you get one of these, write it down, label it a P7, and just move on. Okay, don't try to do anything with it. Now, P7 visit. A P7 visit can be very exciting or unsettling. It's often mistaken for a ghost, a spiritual entity, alien communication, with Melchizedek or some planet or something, your spirit guide, an angel, and so on. I'm not saying that those things don't exist and aren't real, but this is very different from them, and with practice you can learn to tell the difference. This is a case that happens in CRV where your mind communicates with you with such strength and in such a way that you absolutely cannot ignore it, and it makes sure that you can't ignore it. It's the P7 equivalent of a bilocation or perfect site integration. Now, for those who don't know what bilocation or perfect site integration is, there comes a time in a CRV session when you look up and you cannot tell that you're not at the target. It's not an out-of-body experience. It's totally different. But you cannot tell that you're not at the target. You feel the wind on your face. You hear the sounds. You walk. You can feel the ground under your feet. You can touch things and feel them and so on. And it is not an out-of-body experience. It's called bilocation. Well, this is the P7 equivalent of it. But instead of seeing the site, the visit, you're going to see whatever your subconscious projects into the room with you in order to tell you what it wants to tell you. It's as rare as a real bilocation event, and it happens, and it appears to only happen when the information is of such great importance that your mind will absolutely refuse to let you ignore it. You will sometimes tend to not write it down in your session because, I saw somebody appear in the room with me and they told me things. You don't want to write that down maybe because this is going to a police sergeant somewhere and he's going to think you're crazy and throw it all in the trash can. And so you don't write it down. You will sometimes tend to not write it down, but you will also tend to want to tell everybody you know about the event because, it is absolutely real to you. It is so real, it's amazing. Examples. I was viewing one time and reporting Saddam Hussein's plans and intentions for the next day of battle. I was working completely alone over in the operations building when suddenly somebody behind me put his hand on my shoulder, leaned over me, and said out loud into my right ear, "You're not going to believe what comes next." surprised the heck out of me. I jumped and I looked around and I found out that I was still totally alone in the building. After getting my composure back, I continued the session, and sure enough, the intelligence information that I got next was totally unbelievable about one of Saddam Hussein's plans, and it wound up to be totally true. If it hadn't been for that one bit of information forced on me and given to me in such a strong way, I would not have reported what came next, because it was unbelievable. But it was also the crucial aspect of Hussein's plans and intentions for the next day. Another example, when I was young, my father used to thump my ear, whenever I wasn't paying attention. I always hated that, but it made me pay attention. There have been times when I've just been going through the motions of doing a session, and all of a sudden I feel the sharp pain or the thunk on my ear. I begin to pay attention, and it has always been the right thing to do, as that is when some very important information is about to come through and I haven't been paying attention to what I'm doing. Now, there are times in this type of P7 when you will actually see a person form in front of you, when you will actually feel them. They will touch you and you will feel it. This isn't a bivocation to the sight. This is your subconscious making it so real to you that you cannot ignore it. And because of that, many times you will think, oh, my spirit guide just, or an angel just came into the room and told me something and all. It's your mind. And it is a known phenomenon in CRV when you're in the very deep stages and you get a P7 like that. Okay, direct knowledge. There are times when your subconscious mind will just come right out and tell you what you need to know. These times are rare. They appear to be very taxing on the subconscious mind. It's not speaking its native language of concepts, analogies, symbols, and all that. It has to translate itself and tell you the specific knowledge. This kind usually happens when one, the target information is very important, when you don't seem to be honoring what the subconscious mind is telling you at other times. You're putting your conscious mind in charge and you're just screwing the session all to pieces. And 3, you're analyzing and fighting everything in your session that you're getting in from the subconscious because you don't want it to be that, or because you think the target is something else. And 4, when your subconscious gets so disgusted with you that it decides to treat you like a simpleton and just spell things out for you, that's when it's going to come through and give you this direct knowledge. And like I say, it's very taxing on the subconscious mind. This kind of P7 is always accompanied with a feeling of resignation, like, oh, well, let's do it the dummies way, pity, disgust, or frustration, and it will always be accompanied with that type of emotion. You may even hear the small voice in your head saying, "It's the Taj Mahal, you idiot." And believe me, I've heard that voice. And believe me, it's used that term. If you get a P7 of this type and don't write it down, your subconscious is going to basically say, I'm out of here. He's not listening to me. He's not paying attention. I quit. And any hopes you ever had for a successful session will be over. If you get one of these direct knowledge P7s, it tells you, for one thing, that you're not in structure, you're not following the proper methodology, and it tells you another thing is your mind, your subconscious mind is ready to just walk out on this whole session and leave you hanging. You must write this one down. You must learn it. Okay? There may be more questions about that. There's more. There are many other types of P7s, but they're so rare that I'm really not going to cover them in this presentation, because you'll probably never encounter them anyway. You probably never even hear about them for anybody else encountering them. The seventh stage or phase of CRV is an extremely complex stage with many different types of instances, each with its own way to be handled, each with its own way to be reacted to. It's as complex as the mind is, and it has many forms of self-communication, just like the mind does. And the whole P7 thing is your subconscious mind trying its heart out to get information across to you. Write it down, okay? Can't stress that enough. I don't know of any other form of RV that even begins to deal with this aspect of viewing. And as far advanced as CRV is, I mean, it's what, 35, 40 years in development now? It's still growing. It's still learning more and more about the way the mind interacts with itself. And there's much, much more to be discovered. Now, I don't want to seem elitist about this. I guess in reality, I have to be, though. CRV has been in development in the laboratory, databased, and put into operations by the government, and has shown 25 years of that were successful. And I see, I see sessions put out on the internet that people are very proud of and have a right to be, but they are, the product of teachers teaching other than CRV, and they're very basic. I haven't seen any other form that will teach copying documents that are locked in safes halfway around the world, and so on. So anyway, those of you who are not using CRV, this is probably just a moot bit of entertainment. Those of you who are using CRV, it really gives you something to look for and to learn about. And like I say, in our manual, in our basic manual, we simply introduce stage 7 and give you a little familiarization with it, and that's it. And like I say, in Paul's manual, I don't know if he even covers it, and you won't find hardly any. This may be the only thing you'll ever find about phase 7 on the internet, and it can be very complex, and it takes a lot of work to learn to control it or to take advantage of it and to use it. Now comes the problem, okay? The main problem with learning about P7, and one of the reasons it's only generally taught in detail to very advanced students, and now to you, is that now you will tend to start thinking that normal AOLs and stray cats and so on are actually P7s. There is a difference. Learning to distinguish between those two types of things, a P7 and just a normal visual AOL, stray cat, and all that, takes practice and more practice and more practice. I can't stress that enough. Okay, so basically, how do you tell the difference between one and the other? Now there's the rub. P7 perceptions are almost indistinguishable from random thoughts, from your imagination, from even ghosts and spirit guides. I mean, something appears in front of you. What are you going to think? Yeah, or you're working along and all of a sudden here's Yoda standing on your desk or something. How are you going to tell that from hallucinations? It's so much indistinguishable that it's really hard to tell when you've had a P7. But there are some indicators. One, they come to you completely unbidden, just wham, out of the blue. And those of you who know AOLs and stray cats and all, you know that they kind of creep in and sneak in on you. A P7, wham, man, it's just there, and it's in your face. Deal with it. They're usually accompanied by an emotion, and often that emotion is self-annoyance. You know, why am I thinking about this? Get away, put that away, and all that, so I can get on with my session. Well, it's a part of your session. They rarely ever make sense to you at the time. In fact, they usually make you react with either annoyance at the fact that you've got this song coming through your head, or something goes wham, and you say, "What?" You know, it just totally doesn't make sense. They will be in one of the forms that I showed in this talk, and this talk will be up on Facebook. So if you want to go over it again, you can. You will often write them down as an AOL or stray cat and move on without labeling them as a P7. No problem. You will recognize them as a P7 when you go back through your session to write your summary. You can relabel them at that time. And if you miss one and you don't relabel it, big deal. Generally, the analyst, if you're working with an analyst, will catch it. If you're not working with an analyst and you're just doing a practice session, you see your feedback, you'll all of a sudden realize, oh, that was a P7. And this is how you learn to distinguish the P7. So it's all good, okay? Don't worry about it. P7s are usually highly accurate, but almost always very vague. You must never try to understand them when you're in session. Try to figure them out when you're writing your summary instead, okay? Don't stop your session to do an analysis on a P7. And last of all, if you don't write them down, you will probably lose the most valuable and accurate information your session has to offer. Easy way to make sure you get them written down: write down everything that goes through your mind from the time you start a session to the time you end a session. I don't care if it's a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Write it down, okay? Write down everything, and you won't miss anything, all right? Your subconscious mind tries its heart out to tell you things, but it tells you in its language, and you just have to learn that language. And the P7 is very strictly subconscious language. You just have to learn to recognize it, write it down, and then figure out later what it means. Okay, I'd like to thank everybody who's gotten something out of this, and hope you still get more out of it. We can talk about this to get more out of it. To everybody who uses it in remote viewing work and practice, and especially to Teresa, who sponsors these online practice, analysis, discussion, and information sessions. Her work and contribution is really beyond priceless. I mean, she puts a lot of work into these things, and she makes me tired just watching the work she does. I don't see how she does it. For information, you can go to this, and this was put on here for the people who will see this on Facebook and get curious about coming to these sessions. Okay, that's my song and dance. Teresa, if you're still awake, you can have the desktop back. Is Teresa still awake?
How in the world would I fall asleep during that? I'll tell you what, that was better than any movie I would ever go pay to see.
Oh, good. And it was free.
And thank you for all your kind words. I appreciate that. And, you know, the reason I do this is because there are people who go to bed with questions about themselves every night.
Yeah.
And remote viewing has, I mean, we may not know how it works, but it helps a lot of people understand a lot of things about themselves that didn't make sense before. And there are just no place to get answers. And so I found that learning remote viewing was just beyond priceless. So I thought, I'm doing what I can to get that information out.
I'm glad.
And so that is one of the things one of the things I can do is do these webinars. So we have this little desktop share thing up here, and I'm not sure why. Oh, I know. I just need to change it back to me.
John asked a good question. He said, how long does it take to get proficient and using P7? Let's see, I've been in this for right at, shoot, I'm getting old, almost 30 years now. And as soon as I find out, I'll let you know.
Lynn, I had to laugh when you were giving your presentation. By the way, keep those questions coming, folks. I'm watching the text area. And we do, looks like we have some question marks in the air. So anyway, I really was, as you were explaining here toward the end, how there's some self-annoyance often involved. This really did happen to me at work. I was sitting there, and one of the guys who works in respiratory was walking through. I just posted this story on Facebook, and he was coming toward me, and just bang, right then, the fight song from Wisconsin State, the football fight song, on Wisconsin, you know, it goes like that. I'm sorry to treat you to my singing, but it repeats, you know, on Wisconsin, and I'm like, he's walking past me, and I'm like, yeah, I got on Wisconsin stuck in my head. And he's like, on Wisconsin? I said, you know, the fight song, on Wisconsin. And he's like, oh, well, maybe that's because I'm going to Wisconsin tomorrow. And he kept on walking.
But notice that the whole song wasn't stuck in your head. It was just those two words. And
it was the two words that repeated, and I didn't know the third stanza, but by then he was already like even with me, and so I stopped to converse.
Even if you had known the whole song, those are the only two words that would have gone through your head, because it's the lyrics that are important, not the song. Okay. Daniel asked a question here. If P7 is unbitten, how can it be used for alphanumerics? It can't. Analytics, which is stage 8, which has been moved to stage 8, that's what's used for alphanumerics and choices and all. P7 cannot be used for alphanumerics and decision making and stuff like that. So I'm glad to clear that. Hope that clears that up.
I'll be getting to you. I'll key up your mics in just a moment. I'm seeing how many questions we had over there. And let's see. Yes, no, seems like ARV. So do you want to take that one?
I don't see that one. John asked if I've noticed that different viewers' subs tend to have favorite of the P7 modes. I have P7s are very rare, and I've seen that quite often. I've seen them happen quite often in advanced class, but rarely ever before that. But yes, I have seen that viewer subs tend to start finding out what symbols will get certain things across to you, and when they do, when it figures that out, it will start using that symbology for you, and it will become a favorite symbol. One of the students sees anything with 4 legs, and what is it? Oh, I'm sorry, I get this backwards. Sees a giraffe and knows that the biological is a 4-legged instead of a 2-legged biological, or a tree or something like that. And the symbology of seeing a giraffe, getting a visual of a giraffe, tells her that it's not human. And so it's the symbology, even from the first day of basic, the subconscious is looking around for the symbols that it can use to talk to you. And so the answer is yes. I'm sorry, what was the other question?
John P. said that, made a comment, it's to, not everybody can see it. Yes, no, seems like ARV.
Yeah, the analytics was an attempt to do ARV work in CRV, to get some part of CRV to do the work of ARV. And that's what it was for. Decision making, the best of 5, or the best of 10, yes, no, things like that. That was the original idea. What we found out was that if you're in stage 6, you take a break, do an ARV session, bring the information back, plop it into the stage 4 matrix, and go on with your session. So you've already got a tool, and ARV becomes a tool that you can use in CRV. Just take a break, do the ARV, and report it in your CRV matrix and keep on going. Cue with the information you've gotten and things like that.
He says, aha.
Aha.
And thank you. So actually, John Cook said thank you. So, and then out of 10 to 20 sessions, would you get a P7 once or twice?
Depends on how advanced you are in CRV. And I would have to say that getting a P7 is not nearly as important as recognizing that you've gotten a P7 and knowing what to do with it. It's practice. It's practice, practice, practice. Keith said, do you still contend that if you have a strong desire to put quote marks around it, then it's likely a P7? No. I've always said that if you have a tendency to put strong tendency to put quote marks around it, it's an AOL, or a stray cat, okay? Not all stray cats and AOLs are P7s. A P7 is a very specialized form of this thing where your subconscious breaks past that gatekeeper and spills some information over into your conscious mind. Normally, that's just an AOL or a stray cat. The strong desire to put quotation marks around a P7, I've never realized it before, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that. They'll write a book title or a quote from a song or something and just write it out. I don't think I've ever seen myself or anybody put quote marks around it. I'm going to have to go back and look at some old sessions now.
I came in on that late. I was kind of making an adjustment here, scrolling. Where am I falling out? Time and again, I've heard if you write quotation marks around it, it's usually considered information coming directly from the site and a P7. So is that what you meant, or was there like a subparse to that?
No, I have never said that. I've always said that if you tend to put quotation marks around it, it's almost always an AOL or a stray cat. And again, AOLs and stray cats are different from P7s.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There's, let's see, I'm not used to using a Q&A box down here. Harold has a question, since maybe you addressed this, P7s are completely unbidden. Is there a way to prompt for them or increase their occurrence?
No, it's like I say, it's the phase 7 equivalent of bilocation. The more you try to bilocate, the less it's going to happen. You can't make it happen. It just phase 7 happens. It's like crap. It just happens. No, you can't prompt for it. You can't do anything. It just it's not there. Then it's there, and then it's gone.
Terry is asking, I wrote Peter Pan as an AOL in session once. Do you remember the discussion we had on that, and would that be a phase 7? And yes, I remember that, but I'm trying to remember exactly what the target was. Terry, can you flip that up there?
Okay, the answer to that, whether it's a phase 7 or not, is basically how did it come to you? Yeah, it's a title. You probably, probably tended to put quotes around it, but did it come to you slowly? Did it just whap you upside the head, or what? And this is one of the ways to tell whether such an impression is an AOL, a stray cat, or a P7.
Right, I'm asking her. I'm trying to remember what the target was because it seemed to be symbolic at the time when we were having our online discussion.
Okay, Janine asked if you hear a name or word during your session and put quotes around it, would you put it on the right side of your page? Yes, I would. And would you put it as an AOL or a P7? That depends. Do you hear it in your mind, or do you hear it physically in your ears? I mean, when whoever it was put their hand on my shoulder, I thought somebody was standing behind me in the room. Then they said out loud so that I could hear it in my right ear, "You're not going to believe what comes next." That wasn't in my mind. I heard that in the room. And I mean, it was so strong that it was no longer mental, it was physical. And that's what I would call a P7. If you hear it in your mind, it's probably your mind, telling you a name or whatever. It may be a very mild P7, I don't know. But yeah, definitely write it down on the right side, just in the same format that you would write any other AOL or stray cat. And then when you do your summary of this session, or when you hand your session to an analyst, that's when it will be seen in the context of the overall session, and that's generally when you can tell.
Next question, somebody's got, here, I have to scroll back up. Words that I put quotes around seem to be delivered up to me, and they're usually right.
In their usual what?
And they are usually right.
Oh, they're usually right? Good.
And another, I've been given words that I did not know before.
Yeah. This also tends to be a form of a P7. A very good example is Paul Smith was looking for a hostage. Well, we basically knew where the hostage was, but he was doing a session to find out the health of a certain hostage. And he had the hostage basically look out the window to see what was out there. And what he got back from the hostage was the word Hawaii. And, He repeated it, got Hawaii, got Hawaii. He wrote it down. Okay. Come to find out that a word that sounds almost completely like Hawaii is the name of an antenna in a certain city over in Iraq. And the hostage was looking out the window and saw that antenna out of the window, and that told us where the hostage was. So yeah, so something like that, a foreign word that you don't know, and it will take an analyst to figure out, that can also be a P7. Now, Paul never told how he got the word, you know, how it came to him, just as a blap sudden thing, or if it was given to him by the hostage. He never reported that, so I can't tell you how the word came to him. But the word Hawaii came to him, and when the session went up the chain of command, there was an Arab linguist who knew exactly what the word meant, and you know, in terms of Iraq, and that's how we found out where the hostage was.
John P. says brilliant. Keith says, let's see, where did that go? Scrolling. There you go, Keith. Same for me, when they are spoken or delivered, I have put them in quotes and they've been dead on.
Good, very good. What this indicates is that you're making friends with yourself, and that is never bad. Listen, if you can get to where you can communicate clearly with your own subconscious mind, that puts you head and shoulders above a very crazy, depressed world of people, and you'll find that you have a friend with you always who's lightning fast and amazingly smart. Your subconscious is a fantastic person to get to know.
Nancy is asking a pretty important question here, not to say that the others weren't, but she's hit on something. Once you get a P7, does that become a flag for you to alter the entire course of your session to follow it pre-associatively, even though it doesn't automatically make any sense within the context of the session?
Well, if it doesn't make sense to you, you don't want to logically change the course of your session. No, what you want to do is write it down and move on with your session just like you were before. And then hopefully you know how to properly write a summary, and you go back through your session. You don't just get to the end of a session and write down what you remember. You go back through your session, pulling out the stuff that now looks important to you now that you've had good sight contact. And as you go through the session like this, that's when you figure out, hopefully, what the P7 meant. And so that's where it can change the direction of your summary. But no, don't dwell on these things while you're doing your session. While you're doing your session, you get an impression, you write it down, you move on. Get an impression, write it down, move on. That's all you have to do as a viewer, is get an impression, write it down, move on. It's when you do your summary, that's when you have to really be smart, okay? And so to answer that question, yeah, it can change the direction of your summary, but never let it change the direction of your session.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for all these questions. Very, very good.
John says some of the these 7 modes sound a lot like the way natural psychics or traditional shamans talk about receiving info. Is this probably the same sort of thing, and the aperture is just open enough at this point to allow it? Could very well be. Somebody who is a good natural psychic, and there are few, very few in comparison with a number of psychics, but a good natural psychic will have a working relationship with their subconscious that has developed over years and years. And I've met some of these people, and I watch them work, and I know immediately, you know, on my best day, I could never do that well. And so, yeah, I would say that's probably so.
Sorry, I was scanning again. Touch it and ask and what it means or get an impression. Did you address that in your last answer? I'm sorry.
I didn't actually understand. I'm sorry, my speakers are under my desk here.
Oh.
Can you say it again?
In relationship to the receiving the info, and if the aperture is just open enough by this point to allow. Okay, then underneath that, then it's a different John. My bad. Touch it and ask. What it means to get an impression?
What does it mean to get an impression?
Yeah.
This is one of the things you touch the paper, or you remember that CRV is a physical discipline. You touch something here, you touch an ideogram, you touch the paper, you touch a column or whatever, and you can even see people sketching and touching the sketch. You can see them sketching up in the air, and they'll actually go back and touch places in the air and get information from them. And you get an impression of red. That's an impression. You touch your ideogram, and you get an impression of smooth, or you get the feeling that the paper under it is smooth. You touch another place on the same ideogram, you'll get the impression that the paper under it is rough. It's the same piece of paper. It's the same squiggly line. It's the same piece of paper, and you're getting different impressions.
He clarified. He says, I mean, when you touch the word delivered up and ask what it means, because he's the person that said he gets words that he didn't know before. So he says, you touch the word delivered up, ask what it means. If that word is not known to you, would you get information?
Oh, it's possible. When you get a word that you don't know, it sounds just like gibberish or something. You know, you get sausage, and you say, what in the world? And you don't know what it means. You write it down as well as you can. And anytime you get a foreign word, take it into your summary. I don't care if it's a stray cat, AOL, VII, I don't care what it is. If it's a foreign sounding word, make some note of that in your summary, because then it will get passed to somebody, hopefully, who will know what it means. But as far as using that as a cue, sure, you can do that. You touch some gibberish word and you get back round. Yeah, write down round. Okay, and then move on in your session. But as far as stopping the session to figure out what it means, don't do that. If you get a foreign word, touch it. If you don't get anything from it, fine, just keep on going. But when you write your summary, make sure it gets in there, okay? If you do get an impression from it, hey, write it down, keep going.
Paul is asking, while writing your summary, you're still in session. How would you encourage your subby to help you decipher what those P7s mean and how they relate to the target? Do you have any favorite tools or tricks you would use to get a better understanding of the P7 meaning?
Did he say in the beginning, while you're doing your session?
While you're writing a summary, we are still in session.
While you're writing your summary, yeah, okay. Are there any things? Yeah. By that time, you will hopefully have gotten good sight contact, and you'll generally know what it means, because you'll see that this is an analogy for something, or this song title applies in this certain way or whatever. If you don't know what it means, hey, it's like a foreign word. Make sure it gets into your summary. Somebody else may know.
Definitely. Somebody else may know.
One of the hardest things to teach viewers about remote viewing is that it's not hard. You know, you get an impression, you write it down, and move on. You're the village idiot who happens to be able to give advice to the doctor, the lawyer, the Indian chief, to everybody else. And it's good advice. And a lot of times you don't even know what you're talking about. It's remote viewing is not as hard as people make it.
Then Daniel's got, do P5 tools work on a P7?
That's a good question.
I've never seen you think that long.
I don't know the answer to that. I know that you can use 2 of the P5 tools on a P7. I'm not sure how beneficial it is. I really don't know the answer to that one. I don't think I've ever done it. So I have to be honest here. I don't know. Good question. I'm going to have to figure that one out. That's going to bother me.
Uh-oh. And John P. is saying that he has the word that was relevant to a murder in their location, and and this is why the analyst overlay, viewer overlay, you don't get to decide what's important, because here he thought a word was just thanks in Arabic, but it turned out it was a name, and someone did know what that word or name meant, which was the investigators. There you go.
That's it. You know, the mantra in all the government is when in doubt, classify. In CRV, it's when in doubt, write it down. Carry it into your summary. If you don't know what it means, but you have a feeling that it might be important, hey, stick it in the summary. Somebody else will know. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a practice session, and by putting it into your summary, you're taking a chance of getting a negative point, big deal. I mean, you're going to learn from it. Score don't matter. Learning matters.
Yep.
Someone did know that this name meant the investigators. Yeah. Yeah, many times when you're working for the police, you'll find information that makes absolutely no sense to you. And I've even seen sketches that make no sense to anybody. I mean, they look just like a monkey got an ink pen and squirted it on the page or something. And the customer will come in, see that sketch, and just go wild because they know exactly what it means. And you know, and you have no idea what it means at all. Neither does your analyst, neither does anybody else. But the customer knows exactly what it means. Yeah, when in doubt, write it down.
Okay. Scanning both.
Yeah, I'm not getting any of the Q&A entries.
No, and really everybody's putting most everything into chat, so that's fine.
Okay, good.
And a lot of things have been coming to just me, so that's okay. I've been making sure that they get funneled into the conversation.
Oh, good. Yeah, P7 is one of the things that we don't tend to teach even in the advanced course. We introduce it in the basic course, but we just sort of give a very washed down definition of it. And when a viewer gets much more experienced, much more trained, and many more sessions under their belt, they'll start noticing that certain AOLs and stray cats are kind of special, and that's generally when we introduce to them the P7, because that's when we know they're ready to get it. Like I say, the P7, very, very complex, and unless you've practiced and really gotten a lot of experience with it, it's almost indistinguishable from everything from thinking it's an AOL all the way up to having hallucinations. And it's just your mind talking to you.
Daniel is asking, can a stage 8 ideogram appear before stage 8, or are they unique to the phase 8 tool set?
No. Here's something else we don't generally tell people until they're ready, that any stage can appear at any time. You can do phase 1 and all of a sudden a phase 8 or a phase 7 or well, anything but a phase 5, which is not remote viewing, can pop in just like that. There are some targets that are important, or there are days when your subconscious really didn't want to mess with any of these hour-long sessions, so it just goes blat and tells you the answer. And I know I've had plenty of times when I would sit down and write, Len Buchanan or 018 and write my header, and I would get to advanced visuals, and all of a sudden a stage 3 sketch would come in. I would feel the pressure to label it, and I would have the target right there. Now, because we were uniform in our work, I would then have to go on with the whole session. But there have been times when I get to the advanced visuals or the POCA, previews of coming attractors, and nail the target right there. It happens. So the answer is yes, a stage 8 can come in before you get to stage 8.
I think we're going to have to do another one of these on stage 8.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this session is going. We're going to have to chase that detail.
To be totally honest about it, Ingo did not basically want stage 8 to ever come out.
Okay.
And so he said we didn't really need stage 7, but I think he just refused to teach us stage 8. Now, he had gotten, by the time of his death, he had gotten all the way up to stage 18, which he didn't teach to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He took it with him.
Yeah. All right, folks, we've been at this an hour and a half. I'm really happy with all the questions. And I think that a lot of people are going to go away learning a lot tonight.
Well, I hope so. This is, like I say, this is information that I don't think you're going to find anywhere else in the world. In fact, much of this was never discussed in the unit, was never taught in the unit, and was never taught even by Ingo to those who got his direct training. When I came into the unit, this was introduced, stage 7 was introduced as this, and basically I was told, you know, it's like crap, it happens, and how to handle it, how to write it down and all that. But I've had to analyze database, and I've got 20 years of databasing and analyzing these stage 7s in order to finally figure out how to properly handle each one, you know, what to do with the information and so on. And like I say, tonight, what I've told you so far is the top 1/100th of top 1% of stage 7. And so it's a very complex subject. Anytime you start dealing with how the mind communicates with itself, you're into a complex situation.
That's an understatement, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think everybody's kind of winding down, so possibly this would be a good place to end.
Okay. I just want to thank everybody for being here. I hope I didn't waste their time. I hope this helps somebody.
Now, Pat just made a statement that I've seen from him before down in Q&A. Had some of those, always thought it was just my subconscious having a joke on me. He said that in our little Wednesday chat before. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Don't throw them away. It's good stuff.
Yeah. A lot of times your subconscious just gets bored with the whole process, or it gets mad at you and just, you know, says, okay, well, this idiot's not going to do the job right. I'm just going to do it for him. And it starts acting up. It starts passing puns and jokes, or sometimes it'll just come out and call you an idiot and say, here's the answer, stupid, you know. And yeah, it happens. And when you get jokes like that, it's very rare that an AOL or a stray cat is a joke or a pun or something like that. And if you get one of those like that, it's probably a P7.
And lots of thanks rolling in through the feed here and saying that it definitely was helpful. And Linda says it helps to know that we're okay when these things happen. That is, that we're not losing touch.
Good.
So, yep. And with that, I think we are, somebody said, who's saying? Pat, back. Thank you, back in a couple weeks. And just to let everybody know, yes, we are going to have our usual target discussion in 2 weeks. And hey, you'll be getting more postings and reminders. For those of you who are working the target, if you want to get it to me, I can retask you, but been pretty busy, and so doing some operational work as well. And so if you get it to me sooner, I can retask you if you want some practice, but if you wait, then I can't. And also, I'm going to have to start pretty much putting my foot down. If you do not get your practice sessions to me 48 hours in advance of online, I am not going to be able to roam around in my computer, in my filing cabinet, and in my mail trying to retrieve them. So anyway, anybody working the target for this month, please get your sessions to me at least 2 days before we are going to discuss. And with that, we're going to have a discussion next month, which talks about topology and culture and how that affects what you could be getting in session, how to recognize it, and how it would be beneficial if you had an analyst and maybe some local people who are well-versed in the area, how that would be helpful. And with that, I think I am going to wrap it up. Thanks again, Lynn, for coming. Appreciate it so much. Take care, everybody, and thanks to all of you for your good questions and for coming.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.